it was at that time that I started developing a clientele. Okay. Started bringing people in, and I'm in New York City, and I have, some celebrities, and, the salon was a big, midtown hair salon, and it was fun. It was enjoyable, but Charlie was still getting fucked up.
Right.
Every hour I'm in the bathroom taking a hit off a rock just so I could function, just so I could see straight.
Right.
And that would go on, and then it was like, okay, I can't do crack anymore. I can't have that super up. And then so I would just do coke. I would just do blow all day long. And again, I'm making nothing.
Man, this is going to be my favorite podcast. Honestly, I'm telling you right now. And it's because...
You say that every week.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I say that because how I met Charlie Price is through my wife. And Ben, you know my wife, Tiffany, and she's like a rock, dude. It's hard to get in. Like, it is absolutely impossible to break through my wife. And she doesn't like a lot of people. She likes certain people. She doesn't like everyone, right? Am I being... Oh, yeah. Am I accurate on this?
I mean, she loves me, but...
I don't know about that. Oh, okay. I don't know about that. I think you're giving yourself too much credit.
Well, this is awkward.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little awkward all of a sudden. No, she does. She loves you. But my wife went to Charlie, and Charlie, and I'll give you a little background. Charlie Price and Company... Charlie is a hairstylist here locally in Dallas, has the Dallas office, has Fort Worth office, am I right?
Yep.
Looking to expand into Austin and
soon.
And the lovely city of Houston at some point.
Some point.
Houston. But Charlie is extremely well known throughout the country, not just in the Dallas market. He's known internationally for who the talent that he's worked with and the prestige of people that he's worked with as far as being a hairstylist. But my wife, and I'm going to read this to you, she said to me,
get ready.
Hold on.
You could call, I said, tell me a little bit about Charlie. Just give me some of some nuggets. She says, you can call him the hair god.
Oh. Okay.
And I was like, okay, wow. The hair god.
All right.
I've never, okay, that's something. And she says, I said, well, give me a little bit more depth in background of how you met Charlie. She said, look, that's this simple. I was asking some of the people in the city. I ran into a few girls in the city, and I see their hair, and I was like, man, your hair looks really nice. Who did your hair? Charlie
Price.
Ran into another young lady. Who did your hair? Charlie Price. Got to the airport one day and met a young lady, and she said, let me guess. Charlie Price did your hair. She said, how do you know Charlie?
Yeah, women have really big mouths.
They do have big mouths, right? So
good for you.
Yeah.
So she sought you out. She found you, and I'm sure she probably haunted you and tracked you down and the whole nine. And
you're right. I mean, of course, you're married to Tiffany.
Yes.
I've just in my brief time with my relationship with Tiffany, I could see an onion kind of feel, layer by layer, peel by peel. But, it's true. Women have big mouths. If they love you, they'll tell, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
If they hate you, they'll tell 3,000.
Right.
So I'm fortunate to be on one side most of the time.
Right.
When it comes to hairdressing, of course.
Right.
That being said, yes, I've enjoyed getting to know Tiffany very much. I started working with Tiffany probably about only about a year and a half, 2 years now. And Tiffany is not a girl that she doesn't really want to work for this relationship. She wants it to just kind of happen. And with me, it's I have a whole long list. It's like, Tiffany, we'll see you in like 4 months, and you have to send us pictures and send us yourself and this. And Tiffany's not, she really doesn't want all. She just wants to get her hair done.
Right.
And so she went through the whole thing and the whole protocol. And she, most clients that see me the first time come in exhausted. They're like,
Right.
fuck, I finally made it.
Right.
I finally am here. That being said, some of my greatest clients have come through that process and how that works.
Right.
But that's just kind of how I have run my business the last several years. And I've had nothing but true admiration for getting to know Tiffany, getting to know yourself, and sharing a meal with Judea as well.
Yeah.
So, and here we are, Darren.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So
And
we're going to go back because Tiffany, the first day she went and got her hair, you did her hair the first time.
Mm-hmm.
She came back, and evidently you peeled back the onion, brother, because she got to know a lot about you as well.
Yeah.
And she came back, and Ben, I told you this. I called you up immediately. I said, look, we got to get this Charlie on.
Yep.
Because she said, look, this is not Charlie. Charlie has a story. He has a journey and that he's been on. Mm-hmm. And he's had some ups and downs, and you need to ask him about his story because people need to hear this story. And that's what we want to do today, Charlie. I want to, I know you're highly successful. You're working with some of the biggest and finest out there right now as far as, actors, actors, everybody, right? Entertainers, whatever. But I want to know your journey. I want to know.
Are you sure?
Yes. We're going deep down here. Where did you grow up? What was family life like? Start back from there, Charlie. Give us a little bit of
Well, it's interesting because I don't know exactly when it was, but I was listening to your podcast. It had to be within maybe a month, maybe 2 months, but it was on, I believe it was on gratitude or acknowledging being grateful, something in that realm. It was recent. And, you alluded to one word during that podcast several times as you were being interrupted, as you guys were talking, and as there was banter, and it was experiences. It all comes back to experiences. Being grateful and gratitude in your life comes back to experiences. And I'm not going to say fortunate. I'm not going to say unfortunate, or should I say dysfortunate? But I've had a lot of experiences, and but I think those experiences then mold you to the person that you are today, and will continue to day after day if you're, if you're aware of acknowledging them. Right. It really doesn't. I wear, when I'm in my salon, I'm Charlie. I'm the guy.
Right.
And I like to think that I have a more extroverted self, but my introverted self really likes to kind of be the component of not being in the center, not of attention. I've always veered away from that. I've always taken away from it. And through my success and through that journey, it's kind of put me in that light, which is uncomfortable, which I'm getting a little, I'm sitting here with Darren Woodson. We'll get into that story a little bit later. But, Darren, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mother and father. Yeah, here we go.
We just start the argument. Hey, you always talk that shit about the Steelers, so I had to. We're gonna do it live on air.
Stop interrupting me.
Okay, go ahead.
He literally said, "I was born in Pittsburgh," and we're already off the rails.
That's all you had to say because he's always on me about my Cowboys. So go ahead, Charlie. Pittsburgh.
Born in Pittsburgh. I was born. I have a younger brother. We're Irish twins. We're 11 months apart. But let me allude right away to the 81-82 NFL football season whenever that was on strike. So the 81-82 football season was on strike, and there was no ball being played. So here comes my brother and I right out. My father was a football coach. Right. So as we get to that point, and then I have a sister that's 8 years older than I. And I was born into a football family. My father, when I was born, was coaching at a very well-known, sought-after Western Pennsylvania high school football with Woodland Hills. And I'm sorry, at that time it was Steel Valley. It wasn't Woodland Hills yet. The merger between a black school and a white school, kind of, remember the Titans story, came about where two schools merged and came to Woodland Hills. But I was born onto the sidelines of football. I mean, I can go back as far as, maybe 8-9 months of just being kind of placed on the sidelines while Dad would coach and, Mom would work. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was a football coach. And, later in life, I was about 10 years old, where Mom and Dad separated. And my father was doing his coaching thing, and just, I had an amazing father. I had an amazing dad. But it just wasn't that later in life feeling where you get, where you have a dad on your side. Or I had, the way I would describe it best is I had a great dad, a horrible father. So that being said, Mom worked 4 jobs to raise 3 kids. And Mom was a school teacher during the day. She went to, Kaufman's, which was like Macy's or Dillard's, and did fragrance. And then after that, she went to a telemarketing job, and then she came home. So, my childhood was kind of spent with my siblings. My sister was 8 years older than I, and, she was always there after school. And brother was, he was always 1 year behind me until later in elementary school years where he passed me. But that being said, my fondest memories of childhood were, one, how hard my mother worked. Mom was always going to work. Like, she was never coming home from work. She was always going to work.
Right.
The short time that she came home was very brief, so I don't remember that. So it was always Mom was going to work. And then my fondest memories with my father were being on the, being at football practice.
Right.
Being on the football field, being in film room. And
did you have any thoughts back then that was what you were going to do? Maybe be a coach or be a football player along the line?
I was a very athletic kid. Once I get into later elementary years, I was a very athletic kid. I kind of did a little bit of everything, but my brother preceded me in anything with a ball. He could throw harder, he could run faster, he could jump further, he could. So it was more of the spotlight was put on my brother, and I was just kind of, my brother was a great pitcher in Little League. And he was a lefty, so he had a curveball at the age of like 8 years old. Wow. He threw a nasty curveball. And the only reason I got pulled up to pony with him was because I was the only kid that could catch him. So I played catcher.
Right.
But I don't think I had one single at bat. I think I was DH'd every time. But I could catch my brother. So that was the only reason I really excelled in baseball, was because of my brother. Later in life, I remember us playing on the same basketball team. We went to a Catholic school in Pittsburgh, St. Elizabeth's, and it was a big diocese tournament, and I think the final score was, 80-60, and 40 points were scored by my brother, 40 points were scored by Charlie. And it was just one of those dynamics that, we grew up in a competitive sports family. And, of course, growing up in Pittsburgh, especially in a football family, it's a drinking town with a football problem. I was born, I don't know if you've ever seen, what Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh looks like. Would love to have my phone on me to show you, but every newborn is born with a terrible towel.
Oh, are they?
Wrapped around me. I don't know if you know this or not, but
What's wrong with you?
What a great place.
We're winners. That's it. We're winners.
See? You see? Reason why we go there.
That being said, God has his team and America has their team. America chooses mediocrity these days.
I'm going to use that.
Oh, my
That's
God.
so good.
See, I'm telling you. That's why I take shots early, because I know it's coming.
You were being proactive.
I was being
with your
proactive,
shot
yes.
taking.
So, like I said, it was growing up in a football family, in a competitive atmosphere with a brother that, you're 11 months apart with. We beat the hell out of one another growing up.
Right.
I mean, basketball was elbows and, and the neighborhoods that we grew up in weren't the best of neighborhoods. They weren't the worst. It wasn't like we were growing up in the hood, but everybody was proving themselves to come up in the neighborhood, and that came with a lot of black eyes and bloody elbows. But at the same time, my brother and I just had this competitive attribute, and then finally there was a point where I surrendered.
What year was this? How old were you when this happened?
You know what? I would love to tell you exactly when it was, but it had to be somewhere around the 8th grade. And it was a sense for me of, that I was not in my father's eye anymore. My brother has superseded me. He's, he might have a shot in college. He might have a shot at the bigs.
Right.
Way oversees Charlie. So now Charlie just can take his step back and figure out what the hell he's going to do.
Right.
Because he's not going to be the defensive, the linebacker that his father once thought that named his defenses after.
Do you think that drew your father to what was your brother's name?
Michael.
Did that draw him to Michael as far as because he saw how
100%. I've been going through years of therapy over this. Of course, it went straight to Michael. Everything went straight to Michael. Where I don't think in my father's eye, I don't think he thought I was less than. I just don't think he knew that that's where my path was going to take me.
Right.
And at that time,
he could relate.
He could very much relate.
He could relate.
He could very much
Common
relate.
interest.
Yeah, very much so. So, I was talking about a fond memory. One story I can allude to is my father went from Woodland Hills to coach at Youngstown State with Jim Tressel.
Yeah.
The Youngstown State Penguins, which obviously Youngstown borders Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. So, it was only about an hour and a half drive. So we spent a lot of time in Youngstown. And there's a football game each year in Western Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania plays Ohio. And it's the Big 33 game. And it's, 30,000 in attendance for a high school football game. The best of Pennsylvania, the best of Ohio. And, when my father was a defensive coordinator or defensive line coach at that time. And I remember, just being really young and being on the sidelines and just hearing, Charlie, Mike, Charlie. And I'm like, what?
Why's he calling my name?
Dad, what? Why is everybody? But my father, we know them. We know outside linebackers is the Sam backer. What was the other? Sam and Mike.
Will.
Sam and Will. Thank you.
Yeah.
But my father nicknamed it Charlie and Mike because it was just, it was easy for him. You had, Charlie weak side, Mike strong side.
Right.
And it wasn't until years later that I realized that Mike was the strong side.
But you're hearing this on the side.
Of course.
Just another shot.
Here we go. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Mom.
I just realized all the jabs I took. But that being said, I hit a point in my life where I just realized that, Mom was always gone. Mom was always gone for work.
Right.
Dad was at this point now really distant because he was now moving into Notre Dame and working with Mike Ditka at the Chicago Bears. Dad was gone, so I was kind of in this place where, 8th grade. I think I was 16 in the 8th grade. So I failed so many. They kept telling me I'm getting held back, but basically that's just a nice way of saying you can't say your ABCs. So I found that out later that it was just you failed. You failed. You couldn't go any further.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You were 16 years old. You were not 16
I
years old.
was 16 in the 8th grade because my brother passed me. So I was in the 8th grade. He was off to high school. So you can imagine what that does to a older brother.
That hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can all,
for sure.
Men being men, you go back to those and you want to be the,
Yeah.
But now looking back on it, it's like, wow, that could really mess you up.
Say it, man.
Yeah.
You say it.
We're wide open on the show.
So that being said, that hit. So it was at that age where I kind of had to find my outlet and find out what my being was going to be because it wasn't going to be football and I wasn't going to appeal to my father.
Yeah.
Or at least I thought I wasn't going to appeal to be this, this son that the oldest son he always wanted.
Yeah. Let me pause you right there because I have quite a few friends who are coaches' sons. And now those same guys are now coaches themselves, and then other friends that are just coaches and they didn't have. It's a very interesting world, and relationship between a father and a son where the father's the coach. Mm-hmm. I'm curious because you mentioned your mom was gone all the time. You mentioned your dad was doing this thing. Where did you look to for guidance? I mean, what was your, how did you learn things? Where were lessons learned, I guess is my question.
That's where the story begins.
There we go.
I found it on the street. I found drugs and alcohol. I found a dope dealer. I found idols that I found it in gangbangers. I found it in the neighborhood. I found it in the city. We grew up in a suburb of Pittsburgh, but the city was so close. And, Ben, we were talking earlier, your right to manhood when you grow up in the city is, I wasn't given a driver's license or taken to the DMV to, I don't even know if my father had a car in my childhood. I think they just, got around, with friends, but they just couldn't afford a vehicle. But when I got my bus pass, that's when shit got real for Charlie.
Yeah.
Because
when
I got my bus pass, when I was accessible.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I like the kids from the other borough. It was a borough outside of where I grew up, and these kids were, they were the fighters, they were the pot smokers, they were the troublemakers, and they were the tough kids,
Right.
And I migrated towards them. I migrated towards that, and growing up where we did, it was I walked to school every day. We didn't go to the bus stop and get on the bus. We walked. And from a really young age, I was, mom and dad told me, you're not going to walk past the barbershop. Just stay away from the barbershop. You don't need to go around the barbershop. And, for me, as I got accessible to the city, I started, going by the barbershop. And I realized the barbershop was a place where all of these men would just congregate.
Pot. Yeah. Yeah.
So, look at all these dads.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I was asked, well, just come by after school every day and sweep hair and strap razor blades, run for coffee, do whatever. Play dice with us in the, it was just this right
You
of
grew up fast.
right away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was that moment and Darren, I loved it.
Oh.
That was the sick part. I was a 16-year-old kid and I wanted to be 47.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
what?
wanted to be 47 that day.
Yeah, look, growing up, my father would take us, and my father wasn't in my life as much, but he would come by. He'd see us every once in a while, and he's like, God, when's the last time we got your hair cut? Come on, I'm going to take you to get your hair cut, right? We would go to the barbershop, and it was probably the first time where I would see my father interact with people, and he was the same way. Gamble, talk like, the language is different.
Everything changes.
They're all
in the barbershop.
talking shit in there. They all know each other, have grown up around each other. It's a different atmosphere. And as a child being in there watching it, it's one thing because I'm usually there and then I'm out. I'm gone.
Of course.
But I couldn't imagine being there all the time,
Right.
running errands and doing those things.
Right.
Now, you're a grown-ass man at that point.
Right. So I'm in seventh, eighth grade, and just enjoying that, but because I was wanted, Darren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wanted. People wanted me. I'm not gonna say I grew up with a father that didn't want me. No, it had nothing to do with that. But it was the feeling, the void that lived inside this little boy that he always wanted. I wanted affirmation. I wanted validation, and these guys gave it to me.
Right.
So I hung out there. I hung out there long enough in order to get the rite of passage. And, later in life, I realized what the barbershop was.
Right.
And it was a front to, mob ties, and it was a front to. But for me, it was a front to freedom. It was a front to adulthood. It was a front to be able to be something that I wasn't.
Right.
I was a superhero in that place. And then through the neighborhood, through the city, people knew who I was. That's, you stay away from that. The truancy officers can't go to his house.
Right.
So it was, you know, I knew that there was power being played. And at that age, you start to understand what that is.
Right.
You know who the toughest kid in the school is. You know who the toughest kid on the block is. You know, and you like that feeling. And like I said, at this time, Dad was removed, fully divorced now. I would see my father on the weekends. A great story about my one thing that just popped into my head. I haven't told this story in a long time, but my mother, we had a weekend with Mom. And we were young. We was probably 7, 8 years old. We had a weekend with Mom. And every time Dad would have us on the weekends, you know, it would be Friday. In high school, it was Friday night game. Saturday film.
Saturday
Sunday
morning.
was off.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how it went. Saturday game, Sunday we would be in film all day long, and then Sunday we got Dad, and Dad would always take us to the zoo. Every weekend, every Sunday, Dad took us to the zoo. We'd come home. Guys, what'd you do with your father? Football, film, zoo. Football, film, zoo. There was some maybe it was Martin Luther King Day, maybe it was President's Day, where we had a Monday off of school, and Mom says, you know what, you guys always go to, you know, the zoo with your father. I want to take you to the zoo. So we go to the zoo with Mom. My brother and I are mind blown. There's giraffes, there's zebras, there's piranhas, there's an aquarium, there's tigers, there's bears. My mom's just, guys, you guys go to the damn zoo with your father every goddamn weekend. Why are you so... No, Mom. The zoo that Dad takes us to is a dirt circle and a horse runs around in a circle. So my father took us to the horse track and called it the zoo. Bravo, Pops.
Bravo.
Rest in peace. Bravo. Well played, sir. I would just love to be on the back end of when Mom approached Dad with that one.
Oh, yeah.
What?
So when I say Dad was removed. Dad was very much removed. And, you know, fast forward into those years.
That's brilliant.
It was part of me. I was just built into the racetrack. I was born into the football field and then the barbershop. It was just, so then I was built into this man's world.
Yeah.
Well, then I kind of liked being in the barbershop. I kind of liked the idea of, you know, I think they maybe cut 3 guys' heads a day, but I enjoyed that part of it. So then I found out that you could work with women. And I mean, I was 16, 17 years old now, going through puberty, finding out that I could be around women all day long. Sign me up.
Yeah, right.
I'm all in.
Right.
And at this time, I had already found booze. I was already getting drunk probably 4 or 5 days out of the week.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I loved getting drunk.
You're an extremist?
To the utmost possibilities. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I don't do anything once. You know, and if I did it once, I can do it better the next time. So yes, I'm very much, whether it's an addictive personality or an extremist. Yes, I'm all of those things.
Okay.
So, you know, I found, you know, obviously I found my dad's beer. You know, finished his beer off, got that little buzz, got that little pang. I like that feeling. So I already started with the booze 15, 16 years old. I was already getting drunk like 3 days a week. I like that feeling.
Yeah.
Didn't have to feel anything. And it made me feel good, you know, as it does. And then it was coming into those later years, 17, 18, where then I found cocaine. Found cocaine, and that was awesome. At 16 to feel what that felt like.
Okay, tell me this. What do you remember the first time you saw cocaine?
Yes. It was in the neighborhood. I saw it crack before I saw cocaine.
Yeah. All right.
So I saw it being cooked.
Right.
And I'm seeing it now. I'm visioning it. I'm smelling it. It's just going back. Yeah, I saw the whole.
But I'm just saying.
I saw the whole. I saw the whole process.
Right.
And then it was maybe within that time frame that I saw powder, and I related to the, I guess I saw enough movies to maybe understand what
Put
the
two
white
and two
powder was.
together, yeah.
But yes, I remember the first time I did it. I remember the first time I saw it, and I was terrified of it.
Yeah.
Because that was a drug.
Right.
Getting drunk in the woods with a 6-pack of Natty Ice, from, some guy that would in the neighborhood that would always buy me, a fifth of Mad Dog or, whatever I wanted to get drunk would. But that was a drug. You couldn't do that one.
Isn't it crazy though? I mean, we're talking about, because you're starting to experience things. You start to experience alcohol. And you know what alcohol is, because you've seen so many people probably similar to myself. I saw everyone drank. My uncles drank. My mother never drank, but my uncles and my father and everybody else was drinking. But it was a total separation when you see drugs. Like totally catches you off guard to say, okay, that's drugs. It's okay to partake in drinking. It's no big deal. But now I'm going to the next level if I'm taking the drugs.
And I never found, the weed, the gateway to the weed, to the pot, smoking. I just, I did it, but I never enjoyed it. It was never something. I always coughed. I was just never enjoyed smoking pot. But boy, I loved cocaine. That first time I found my best friend. I found my newfound love. I found everything I ever needed in myself and out of everybody else in that white powdery substance.
So before you tried it though, you said you were scared. What was the desire to do it in that moment? Do you remember?
The people that I was with.
Okay.
Yeah, the people. God, I was hanging out with some real gems. If those people aren't dead or in prison right now, I'd be shocked. I could go around that circle and just think, God, what a interesting group of people I aligned myself with. But I found it and I loved it. So it was this point where I wanted to kind of get into hairdressing. So I catapult into doing so, and I find out you go to beauty school. Well, there comes the conversation with my father.
Yeah.
Dad, high school's not looking like a great option for me. So I'm going to go to beauty school. What do you think?
Yeah.
An NFL football coach looks at his oldest son and says, "Oh, you know what? Good job. Good for you. I'm so proud of you." I was alienated from that moment. Then I knew those feelings that I had being younger, my brother kind of overexceeding me, and I knew that those were gone because now I had zero relationship with my father. Never understood it, didn't get it. And that just wasn't for me. But it was. In my father's eyes, it was never good. Nothing besides football would have been good enough.
Right.
So that kind of ended our relationship until a few years before until like a year before he passed away. We had time for closure, but then it was gone. There was no more.
You were 17?
There was no more relationship. Yeah, I was 16 or 17 at that point. Okay. Yeah, because like I said, I was in the 8th grade, got my bus pass, and I knew that I wasn't going to be going to high school.
Right, right.
Showed up to high school. I think I lasted 20 minutes. And when I say 20 minutes, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think I went in for half day and was like, this isn't for me. I got in one fist fight in the parking lot. And then somebody beat the hell out of me in the bathroom in like between lunch. So I think I left around 1:00.
Wow.
And that was it. So then I went and hung out in the park and went and hung out in the hood and got drunk and got high and stole and beat people up and, played the game.
Right.
And then I finally got enough audacity to go to beauty school. Went to beauty school. Got a GED.
Okay.
Got a GED. Got a good enough diploma.
Right.
And, it was funny whenever I went to get my GED, my mom drove me to get my GED because she wanted to see that I actually went.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did your mom at this time, did your mom know about the
she
drugs,
knew
the
shit
drinking?
she knew shit was going downhill.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, she knew shit was going downhill, and she knew that I wasn't, things were real rocky at that point. I just found myself encapsulated with the wrong people.
Right.
On every end, north, south, east, and west. I couldn't turn without, and at that age, you're just looking for validation. So, I found it, but I found it with the wrong people. And where you get your GED in Pittsburgh is in the Hill District. In the hood, there's the hood,
right?
Or there's the projects, there's the hood, and then there's the hill. I don't think a white kid has ever seen the Hill District before. But that's where my dope man lived.
Right.
I copped dope, in the hill. So when mom dropped me off at this business school, Conley, where you went and got your GED, she said she knew I knew my way around. And she didn't know how. She didn't know how I knew my way around the hood as well as I did.
Have a car?
Exactly. How the hell did you end up here? So if that wasn't the moment, then it probably came a little bit later. But yeah, that time mom knew.
Right.
Mom knew it was a downward spiral heading for catastrophe. And it did. It did. It went as far down as you could go. Went to beauty school.
Well, no, wait. So talk about that. What was that? Was there a conversation before you went to beauty school? Did you have this conversation with your mom? I know your father was
I remember having it with my father. Scared shitless.
Right.
And I recall a punch being thrown. I recall aggressive. I recall leaving there wanting to beat him up, but I couldn't. He was big man, stronger than I was. There was no way I could beat up my father. My father had a car. My mother did not. So when I turned that age, I remember my father giving us his, I had his car on one Sunday, and I took it into the park, into the Hill District where, I copped. And I remember the part with my father was this moment is I was getting pulled over, and I had my father's car, and it's winter in Pittsburgh. And it's a Chevy Trailblazer. I'll never forget it. And I went and copped dope. And I didn't know what to ask for whenever I was with my dope man. I just heard it asked for rock,
right,
or white, or H. So I wanted to try H. I didn't know what H was. So obviously that's heroin. I picked up a couple. But it was different. It was sold different. It was in balloons. It was in balloon knots. It wasn't in a plastic bag, like white or I'm so ignorant. I had no idea. I didn't even know if Google exists. I would have asked Google, how do I cop crack? Right. And long story short, I'm driving back to my father's to return his car to him, and then I would take the bus back to my mom's house. I get pulled over. I see the lights go off, and I have 3 balloons filled with heroin. What do? You
didn't swallow it. Tell me.
No, hell no, Darren. Took them out of my pocket and I shoved them down the radiator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I shoved balloons down the radiator. So here we are. Let's go back to it's freezing cold in Pittsburgh. And you obviously turn the heat on.
Right.
So I got pulled over. I think I got let go on a warning. I didn't use my blinker, whatever it was. Get back to my dad's house, drop the car off. Kind of out, the drugs. So, they're in the car. He'll never find them.
Right.
No worries.
He'll never find them.
I'll never find them. Until the next morning when he turns his car on and that radiator turns on and melts those balloons and melts the heroin and blows through the car.
Oh my gosh.
So there was my first ass kicking from my father. And when I say ass kicking, when the coyote's chasing the roadrunner and he's running from him, and all of a sudden that damn coyote hits a wall and you can see his silhouette in the wall.
Yeah.
I saw my silhouette in the drywall.
Right.
That my father threw me through on my way out
the door. He must have went to your mom's house and kicked your ass.
So I got my ass kicked for that. That nixed my relationship with dad, and it was at that point that mom knew shit was bad.
Right.
When it wasn't, I don't know how much worse it needed to get, but when she found out it was heroin, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
Okay, we're not smoking joints on the corner at the bus stop anymore.
Right.
So again, at that time, I was just running rampant. I have a mother that works 4 jobs, father that's removed, a sister now that's off to college. I had no accountability. And all I knew is I wanted to go to beauty school because it was all chicks and me.
Yeah.
I think there were like 20 girls in my class, and I was the only straight dude. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
Again, I was put on this pedestal, or should I say, I put myself on this pedestal really young. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved doing, I found something that I really did enjoy.
Okay. Did it come easy to you?
No.
So you had to work.
I did. I did have to work, but now looking back at myself then was that I did have a lot of natural ability. But I liked it so much that I wanted to keep absorbing and keep learning.
Right.
Even through my mental case that I wanted to learn. I wanted to be great.
Right.
I found out like I could really be great at this.
That must have felt so good to have that.
It was a great feeling to know that you wanted it, but then again, there was a lot of work that was going to need to happen.
But to know that you excelled at something, that
absolutely
must have been an awesome feeling.
It was
for the first time in your life.
First time in my life that I knew that I was really good at it. But it's funny that you say that. I'm not sure I felt it. Because I was so high. I was so fucked up. I didn't feel much of anything in those teenage years just because I numbed myself with anything that I could get my hands on.
I was going to ask, did the draw to go to beauty school and become do hairstyling, was that because you
almost called me a beautician, didn't
Sorry,
you?
I don't know.
It almost,
I don't know.
I saw
that B word.
The spirit of the question was,
sorry, I just had to call you out on
were you drawn initially to the environment or to the actual skill?
Damn, that's a good question.
Of
it
being,
was I'd be lying if I said it wasn't the environment. I was just chasing chicks.
That was my theory was that.
I was just, this was a great outlet for girls. That was it. Again, 17-year-old boy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Dude, you knew the
I
game.
was born on the football field, not with a color brush in my hand.
You're actually brilliant.
Yeah, I didn't have a curling iron in my hand. I wasn't jump roping. And,
we're the morons for playing football. You figured it out.
I wasn't. I think I was still playing with my sister's Barbies. Before. It was just. I enjoyed being around women.
Yeah.
I enjoyed. There was something that I just enjoyed being around women. And it's an interesting catalyst today. I still enjoy being around women. I get along well with women. And it goes back to that time where I looked for that validation with my father and wanting that validation that I never could get on the football field. But I got it with what encapsulates the beauty industry, which is 95% female dominant.
Right.
But I also knew that, and I also knew how to play my hand. I knew that there weren't many straight guys that were in beauty school.
Right.
And I was one of them. So I played that card and I played that role, and I learned, I loved the gift of gab. I loved flirting. I loved being, I loved building that relationship, because even if I couldn't cut your hair, I could probably get you to smile. If I can do that, then you might come back, so that's what kind of transcended at that point.
Right.
So
were you working? You weren't working for self. You worked for someone.
No.
You took your first job.
I was working.
Tell us about your first job.
I was working as an assistant. When you go to beauty school, you only learn so much that the state's going to give you. The state's going to give you so much, that you can just pass a beauty. But you assist. You go and at this point now, I'm assisting in Pittsburgh, and I want more than what Pittsburgh has to offer. I mean, Pittsburgh, like I said, let's go back to, it's a drinking town with a football problem. It is not a place for, somebody charging $500 for a haircut. I think the most expensive haircut in Pittsburgh was probably $55.
Right.
It wasn't a place where I wanted to be in Beverly Hills. I wanted to be in the spotlight. I wanted to be in New York. I wanted to be anywhere but Pittsburgh. So that's what took the leap to wanting a geographic change. So that's when I ended up in New York City and moved to New York when I was 18 and got a job as an assistant. And I was assisting, I was schlepping, I was sweeping hair, I was doing just all the grunt work that you do to put your time in any job.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's no different than being a laborer for a roofer, or, doing anything you had to do, or a rookie in training camp, or anything. The world we live in now, we live under this umbrella of entitlement, and it's just something that our generation will never really have the audacity to wrap our minds around, because in any field that you go in, you had to put in the work behind it.
Yeah.
Whether you were a soon to be Hall of Fame, Dallas Cowboy, or you were a acclaimed hairdresser, it didn't matter where you were. You had to put the work in.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew, that's when I look back at my mom. I knew I had a football coach for a father, and I knew I had a worker for a mother.
Right.
So now I knew where, I got my mom's work ethic.
Willingness.
Oh, I got every bit of it. I just watched the woman work. So I figured this is how you do it. You just work. And I put the time in, and then finally I got my moment, but I got my time. And I'm not one that believes in being in the right place at the right time. I think you work to put yourself in the right place, or the right room, or in front of the right human, or you don't just end up there. And it was a hairdresser that gave me a shot. And that's whenever I assisted him on the first New York City Fashion Week. And I looked at this and I was like...
wait. Fashion Week?
Yeah.
How old were you at this time?
I was in 19 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, baby.
Welcome to Bigs.
It was awesome. Everything that a 19-year-old boy could... I was a walking hard-on.
Man, this is... Exactly. I was gonna say
again.
There were models everywhere, and they don't
Yes.
care. They're changing. I mean, I was in heaven. I found the pearly gates, and I ended up there.
How much shit talking were you doing to your buddies back? Like, you didn't go to high school.
Correct. So at this time, I didn't really have many friends.
Right.
I had the dope man. I had, the guys on the block.
Right.
But I didn't have friends. I mean, I had guys I rolled around with, but they weren't, it's not like I was telling them like, hey, you should see. No, it was very one dimensional. And it was, how do we get into the most trouble or get the most fucked up that we can?
Right.
So it was this sense of, now this guy that I was assisting, he was an Australian hairdresser and straight as well, which, in the early 2000s, late 90s, that was kind of unheard of, for men, to be at that level and to be straight. So it was like, he was a boxer in Australia at one point. And there was something that he saw in me, that he saw in himself, and he took me under his wing and he put me out there. And that's when my career kind of, where I knew that I wanted more and I just needed to work at it. And that's when I started, doing Fashion Week, going on fashion shoots, being the, my passport's been stamped, I believe, before I got my new one. I think it was stamped 32 times to Paris, to Paris, France, but I never once ate a croissant in Paris.
Come on.
I was there to drop off bags and get back on the red eye back to New York.
Wow.
Like that was my job, So, but I put in that work and I loved it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And that was the moment when I realized, this is great, but I want to actually be behind the chair. I don't want to do all this camera work and have agents yelling at you and managers yelling at you and celebrities yelling at you. It was just too many people yelling at you and just not enough. I wanted to be behind the chair. I wanted to cut people's hair. I wanted to color hair. But it was through that experience that I got to go through that and realize, okay, I don't love this. Then I moved on to the next one. So then I started working and developing my craft as a behind the chair hairdresser. And it was that's when I realized how bad I was at it. You know, when I got into the New York City salons, and it was like, wow, I'm really not good. But I still had this, you know, charm about me. I was still a straight guy. I still had this aura. I still had this presence that I enjoyed. So I kept going at it. And it was at that time that I started developing a clientele. Okay. Started bringing people in, and I'm in New York City, and I have, you know, some celebrities, and, you know, the salon was a big, you know, midtown hair salon, and it was fun. It was enjoyable, but Charlie was still getting fucked up. You know,
right?
Every hour I'm in the bathroom taking a hit off a rock just so I could function, just so I could see straight.
Right.
And that would go on, you know, and then it was like, okay, I can't do crack anymore. I can't have that super up. And then so I would just do coke. I would just do blow all day long. And again, I'm making nothing. I'm making zero.
Right.
So it, you know, then turn into, who am I robbing? Who am I going to steal? What car can I jack? You know, who can I beat up in the subway and take their wallet? What tourists are going through? You know, holiday season in New York was fantastic because it was always tourists around. You could always snatch and grab. And, you know, I was fortunate because I was good at it, you know, and I never really had legal precedence when it came to that, you know, or I never got caught. So I always just, everything kind of came easy in that sense. But then as my career developed, it was just getting worse and worse. You know, I was in a really bad way.
Right. So were you getting this time, and you're getting all this experience, are you getting, even though you're loaded on drugs, are you getting better at your trade?
Oh my God, I'm killing it. I'm latching on to some of the best in my craft, the best in the business, and I'm learning and I'm absorbing and I'm taking in. And I'm just getting it at such a young age, you know, where I'm working with some of the best hairdressers in the world, you know, and they're in their 50s and their 60s, and I'm, you know, now embarking on 20, you know, and I'm just, you know, I'm charging $300 for a haircut. And, you know, Charlie, you can't tell them how old you are because it'll devalue your service, you know. So I was told, you know, tell everybody you're 26, you know, you're 26, you're 26, you're 26. So I lived in this 26 aura. Boy, 26th birthday really felt shitty. I was like, man, something monumental was supposed to happen. But that being said, no, I was just absorbing so much, Darren, that my craft was just getting better and better and better.
We're going to take a real quick break from today's episode, something that we've been talking about here for some time. If you've been listening, you know, but we have finally arrived at the grand opening of the new expansion at Choctaw Resort and Casino in Durant, Oklahoma. Just a short 1 hour drive from DFW. The time is finally here. I cannot wait for you guys to be able to drive up there and experience this Vegas-like resort with the pools, the restaurants, the concerts. The casino is like none that we've ever seen. But finally, it is here. And so I encourage you guys, starting next week, drive up, take a look, spend the night in the beautiful hotel rooms that they've got. It is worth the drive. Take the family, pick a show. There's an awesome lineup in the month. Jump on the website. But I highly, highly encourage you, go experience the incredible resort of Choctaw Resort and Casinos.
See, that's the interesting thing, because the stereotype I have in my mind is that drug addicts are bums. They don't do anything. They don't excel. They don't have ambition. But you were the exact opposite.
I still had to go to work so I could buy dope at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
So I knew the order in which I had to. I mean, if I didn't work, I couldn't buy dope.
Yeah.
Working addict.
You know, so I knew that I wasn't getting it from my mom. I wasn't getting it from my dad. It's not like things were just, you know, I had this cush little, you know. No, and then I worked 4 jobs. I worked in a butcher shop after work. And then I went and worked the door at a nightclub. And, you know, so I was always working. I was always in it. But I knew the only reason, it wasn't for financial freedom. It wasn't for, it wasn't to get a bigger apartment or buy a new sofa. It was just to buy dope.
Yeah.
I needed nothing besides to fuel the drug addict that, you know, that lived within. But yeah, I was a full-on bum. I was a full-on shitbag. I mean, I was robbing people You know, the moment I walked out from work, I was robbing my own mother.
Right.
I was robbing my grandmother. I was going to any means. No, I was a complete shithead. I just happened to be a really talented hairdresser.
Right. So when was the moment? Something had to happen, Charlie, the first time. Something I've had. Did you even know that this is who you were, or were you just going
As a
through the
hairdresser
motion?
or
No, as a drug addict.
So it was the first time was mom took me to rehab before I was 18 because it was what was it? It was 302. So when you called the police and you had an involuntarily admit somebody in for whether you're just going to the drunk tank or whatever, if it's involuntary, the code with the police is I have a 302. Murder's a 187. I have a 302. My mother 302'd me so many times I was 906.
Wow.
She could not get me into rehab fast enough. He came out, I would go to rehab like most kids go to summer camp. Yeah. She would just ship me to rehab, and then it was mental facility, and it was this, and so the seed was planted. I never got to that because it wasn't really predominant in my story of my first 2 or 3 rehabs. Because it was as soon as I got out, I went right back to it. Mm-hmm. And after 14 days, I learned the system. I could leave. I could walk out against my parents, or guardian. And then I turned 18 and I couldn't be 302'd anymore. So mom couldn't send me away.
Right.
But but my mother was also my number one fan. Mm-hmm. She was the first cheerleader. Mom when I would come home from beauty school, and now I have, I'm truant. I was truant from school. I had, constables after me. I had all the legal precedents that came with it. Mom would pay, this is when we had pagers. Mom would page me 911 not to come home because there were 3 cops sitting on the block waiting for me to come home, and then I was going to get. Right. So mom was my number one fan. She was my number one. She rooted me on harder than anybody could. Wow. But from a distance, because it was from work. It was from a support level that she just felt like, all right, this one, I'm losing grasp of this one. That at some point in there, she also had a huge battle. I don't have children yet, but I can imagine you reach a point where it's like, okay, you just got to go. Like, you got to go. You got to something, whatever, let go and let God. Yeah. That was my mom's, mom finally let go and let God. So the turning point for me was now I had a little bit of rehab in me, but I had a whole lot of ignorance and a whole lot of teenage, so it was just all that
great combo.
You couldn't tell me anything.
Right.
But my experiences and where I was when I looked in the mirror couldn't lie. I knew I had a problem. I knew that this isn't recreational. This isn't fun. This isn't, I'm just having a good time. This isn't experimental. This is, you're fucked up. Right. You're putting one line of cocaine up your left nostril, one line of heroin up your right nostril just to even yourself out. Something's not right here. And it was at that point where I knew I had a problem, and I knew I had to get the hell out of New York. So I went back to Pittsburgh. And Giuseppe, the guy that had the barbershop, when I moved back, one of my biggest mentors in my career was a man named Mickey Lanzino. And Mickey was everything that I just idolized Mick. I idolized him. He rode a Harley to work. He fully tattooed, straight guy, always had the girls, just, and he was the guy that I looked up to. And I remember going into the salon in Pittsburgh, and Giuseppe and Mickey booked a fake client on my books so that I would get there early. It was like an 8 a.m. client. And I walked in, and it was just them standing there. And they said, "Come on, we're taking a trip." And they put me in the back of the car, and they took me to rehab. Oh, wow. And they were like, "It's time. Like, you're going down." Right. Now at this time, Giuseppe had like 12 years sober. Mickey had like 18 years clean. So these guys were in recovery, and they saw me in this place, so they took me. And that's when I knew. That point, that was the turning point. That was a really long answer to a very descript question, but that was my turning point of knowing that I had a problem. Now, that didn't stop. It just ignited the fire. That went on for more years. Went through more rehabs. I've been in 9 detoxes and I think 7 rehabs.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's just go right through addiction. Let's go right through that process and let's just hit my bottom. And my bottom was I was sitting on a fire escape.
How old were you at this time?
I was 23 years old. No. Yeah, I was 23 years old.
Back in Pittsburgh?
Yes. So I'm sitting on a fire escape and I am on a 4 or 5 dayer. And all I wanted to do was just black out. So the only thing that would level me off at that time was tequila. So I was rocketed out of my mind. And I knew I just needed to come down. So I was just taking tequila and then taking a bump, taking tequila and taking a bump. Well, that just completely told my heart to just turn off. So I passed out. And I woke up. And it was at that point where I realized I don't want to live anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I don't want to go on anymore. I'm done. And I don't know if I was doing that with the speedballs or if I was doing that with the I just wanted to turn the lights out for good. Like enough is enough. Just you're a piece of shit. Just die. So I walked into my place and I grabbed a sheet and I tied it on the banister.
Right.
And tied the other part around my neck. And I was like, well, I mean, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go fucked up. So took 2 more bumps and it was that part that I passed out. So I passed out on the fire escape with a noose with a yeah. I was just going to throw myself over. I don't think I would have had the balls to do it, but I wasn't in my right mind. So I think at that point that Charlie would have done anything.
Right.
But my close friend came into the house and my dog, and he heard my dog barking. And my dog was sitting there barking at me. And I just passed out. And when I woke up from that, that's when I knew you got to get clean.
Right.
Because if you can fuck it up killing yourself, then you're really a fuck up. Right. If God doesn't even want you,
Man.
then it's probably time you get clean.
Yeah.
So he took the noose off my neck and took me to I spent like 3 or 4 days in a mental facility, making sure I wasn't a harm to myself. And then I started the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and started getting sober.
Can I ask you a question about that moment, if you don't mind? Was the driver of that, I'm just gonna end it. Was it a lonely feeling? Did you feel lonely in that moment that you just thought?
If you can have every single negative feeling and emotion set down on you, it was that. It was the weight of everything below. How are you doing? I'm okay. Whatever's below okay, it was all of that just sitting on you. There was just no purpose for me to live anymore. I didn't have a purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And thinking back on that day and thinking back on preparing myself, walking into the bed, pulling the sheet off, I'll never forget that feeling. I don't remember much of before then because it was such a long binge, but I remember pulling the sheet off. Like, you just don't deserve it. Going through the motions, feeling that, knowing I can feel the sheet on my hands. I can feel the sweat on my palms. I can feel the hot concrete or the hot metal of the fire escape burning the back of my leg. I mean, I can go through every sense of that moment and knowing that I was very much ready. Like, I wanted to die. I wanted to. I wasn't so fucked up that's all that was left. It was just, I wanted to die.
Yeah. And the only thing that saved you was more drugs.
More drugs. Let's party. So it was at that time that a friend of mine, best friend that I grew up with, he was moving to Dallas. I went to rehab. had like 30 days. Spent 30 days, got sober, came out, but knew that I needed to get the hell out of Pittsburgh, and I wasn't going back to New York.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You got out. Let's say this time you got out. What did you feel like? Because you had to dry out. What was that process like? Walk us through that.
Well, number one, the process was I was 23 or 20. I was 24. It was 2004. And I was so young. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know my elbow from my asshole, but I knew it all. Mm-hmm. But if there was one thing I knew is I couldn't start drinking again. Okay. It was like, I can't do crack, I can't do heroin, I can't do coke, but I definitely can't start drinking again because drinking was going to catapult into more. Right. Anytime I ever tried to just drink, I always wanted more. Mm-hmm. I knew what was beyond 2 beers. Right. As soon as you had 2 beers in the woods with your buddies, I was on the Hill District copping dope. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I couldn't drink and I couldn't do it successfully. So I did. I just went like every day. I just woke up and said, today I'm not going to drink. It wasn't about the narcotics because the disease of addiction comes at you in so many different ways and manifests in the littlest ways. It tells me that I should have a glass of Chardonnay. I can't even spell Chardonnay. Right. What would I ever be doing drinking Chardonnay? But it told me Chardonnay would be okay. Like you'd be okay just drinking white wine. Yeah. Just drink white wine. So I knew that if I just woke up every day and told myself, today I'm going to stay clean. Today I'm going to stay sober. Not worry about tomorrow. At that point, it got so dark and the bottom being killing myself that I knew that if I chose to drink again, that I was going to kill myself. Mm-hmm. So do you want to live today or do you want to die? I chose life. Right. And it was just every day. And then all of a sudden it was 30 days. It was 6 months. Mm-hmm. It was a year. I'm like 2 years. Now I'm starting to put time together. Right. But I also knew that I could never have done it without removing people, places, and things. And all of those were on the Northeast.
So you had to get out.
I had to get out. Right. I had to leave the Northeast.
So what was that move to Dallas like?
So it was my best friend of childhood, and he said he was taking a job in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And he worked for a big corporate company, big corporate finance team, and they were giving him a reload package. And I was like, I don't even know what is this? And, I learned that was something where they, basically paid for his move and bought him an apartment. And he says, listen, you'll just live with me for the first year. My company's paying for it. Yeah. Perfect. And that's what I did. So moved to Dallas, and I didn't know a soul here. Mm-hmm. And it was the most amazing feeling leaving that behind. Mm-hmm. But then I'm hit with a geographic change. What do I say when somebody says I'm ready I need a change? Well, the problem is always in between your 2 ears. Mm-hmm. So no matter where you end up, it's going with you. Right. So I found that later, but I didn't know how much I needed to get out of the Northeast until I ended up in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And I got to Dallas, and at that time, I've built a nice career for myself in New York. Like I was doing a lot of great hair. I had a big resume. I had a great portfolio, and I had a name. Mm-hmm. I had a name in Manhattan. So here I come, big swinging dick. Charlie's going to just show up in Dallas and just, it wasn't the same. Nobody gave a shit about what you did in New York. Nobody even knew what 57th Street was. You know, and if they did, they only knew certain places. They knew the Rockettes, they knew Times Square, but they didn't understand the New York City mentality. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of, oh wow, now I'm really behind the 8 ball. Mm-hmm. At that time, I had worked a couple jobs as an assistant with Charlize Theron.
Oh yeah,
and Charlize was coming to Dallas in 2009, where Dallas had it was a one-off. It was 1 year where they had a film.
The film festival?
A film festival. Mm-hmm. And they had it down at, it was before it was Victory, but they had it down there. They had all these tents, and Charlize was coming in to do whatever film she was doing. I believe at the time it was Monster.
Oh, yeah.
And so Richard was working with Charlize, and Richard was back in Australia. Charlize was, or, her agent was looking for a guy. Well, do you remember that guy that worked with Richard in New York? Yeah, send him. So perfect. I was the backup that ended up going. Well, it just so happens that there was a photograph taken of me and Charlize in Us Weekly. So that got around. The news started chattering that there was this guy that hung out with Charlize, and he's now a hairdresser in Dallas, but nobody knew him. He didn't work for anybody in Dallas. So, and at that time I wasn't working for anybody. I was just teaching. I was just kind of going from salon to salon, just teaching, trying to find a salon to call home.
Right.
And found a salon, stayed there for about a year, kind of just learning Dallas, learning what my industry looked like here. I knew what it looked like in metropolitan New York City, but I had no idea what it looked like in Dallas. And then I just realized it was the environment that I didn't want. I didn't want to be in this salon. This wasn't these weren't my people.
Right.
So then I just said, fuck it. Let me just go lease an apartment, and I'll turn it into a hair salon, and I'll call it Hair by Charlie. Seems logical.
You didn't have to raise any money?
My name's
Just
Charlie.
your
I do
apartment?
hair.
No, and here's the thing. At this time, I was teaching, so I at least had models. I had maybe 25 girls that I had in my phone as clients, and I knew that I could, if I charged this person $80 for a haircut every 6 weeks, times that by twice a month, times that by, I could afford this much in rent.
Right.
So I found that rent number. And then I knew this chair would cost me this much. I knew I could just put a mirror and grab a blow dryer, grab a couple tubes of hair color.
Right.
I knew, all right, I'll just wing it.
Right.
And I did. I just winged it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I did it in a place that made me very unobtainable. It was downtown Dallas, right next to the municipal building. And it was on top of it was where all the judges and cops ate. It was a place called the Metropolitan Cafe, the Metro Cafe, right on the corner of Main and Pearl. It's still there today. Right. But it was on the top of this building, and it was on the 7th floor. And I just decided I'm going to lease that. I'll take that space. It was like $700 a month. Nobody wanted this space, trust me. There was no parking. There was no, I didn't have a phone. I had a Microsoft Office appointment scheduler that I would just text people, and I had nothing. There wasn't even an address, because here's the thing. I didn't know that in order to open a business, you had to open it through the city.
You had
to go to the city and get a permit and, have an address.
Yeah, it's got to be official.
So no, I wasn't. Didn't do any of that. So there was no phone. There was no. There was an elevator. You just took the elevator to the 7th floor, and when you got off, it opened into my thing. Well, and all of a sudden, word just started getting out. Charlie, and I was a couple blocks away from Neiman Marcus. So then it was just like, who's this guy that's just tucked away? He's doing really pretty hair. And at this time I was in Dallas. I was going back to New York for Fashion Week. I was going to Paris for Fashion Week. So I still maintained that presence.
Right.
Because that was the only thing that was paying my bills at the time.
Right.
So I was still traveling. I was still doing that in Dallas. But then I just started building a clientele. And like I said earlier, I alluded to women talk. And that's exactly what just kept happening, was word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. Then I knew in order to look the part, I needed to have assistants.
Right.
So now I couldn't even get myself on a payroll, quote unquote payroll, but I needed to have assistants to make me look legit.
Right.
Like I couldn't be washing my own hair.
Right.
Like I couldn't be sweeping my own floor. I needed somebody else to do it for me.
You got to look the part.
I got to look the part. So
Right.
then I went to the beauty school, and I grabbed 2 girls that were in beauty school, and I said, listen, I'll pay you $200 cash every week if you come assist me. Why these girls said they would, I have no idea. I think it was just, I was a handsome, good-looking guy whenever I was, whenever I was 24 years old, 25 years old. So, let's go. They came in and they would make tips off my clients, and those girls ended up staying. Those two assistants ended up staying with me for 4 years down the road.
No way.
Man.
Great first hires.
Great first hires.
Wow.
And they put up with everything, and as did my clientele. No parking, no phone. No, they just came up, and I built this business, and I built it in the worst place you could. If you could build a business where I built it,
Right.
you could build a business anywhere.
Right.
So, with that, that's what kind of catapulted me into, the next, more official. The great thing is I had a great barbering background. So I had a gift of gab with guys too. I was a straight male. I grew up on the football field. I could handle myself in any male conversation, except when it came to business. I just had no idea. I didn't have that at all.
Right.
So I started getting these male clients that were one was a lawyer, and then he referred another guy who was a developer, and this developer, had a VC, and then I started getting all these suits. In New York, we call them the suits. The suits are coming, all the Wall Street guys making their way back uptown. And so I started getting all these suits, but little did I know at these time, I wasn't cutting their hair for money. I was cutting their hair for my education. Okay, so here comes my high school education. I got it in 1 year cutting hair, and it was, Ryan Kaiser, who is now the vice president of CBRE. It was Tim Headington.
Yeah, Headington.
It was one
of
Forbes' billionaires.
Yeah.
It was Melbourne O'Banion, who owns a amazing life insurance company. It was all of these males had this part in my life, but they were coming in for a haircut. But I was so excited because I was going to class.
Knowledge. Yeah.
I was going to class.
Yeah.
I was learning.
Isn't that crazy, man?
Well, you said it perfect. That was your high school. That was your education.
100% it was. But here's the thing. I knew it.
You actually knew it.
And I knew it.
Yeah,
so I was
better.
running. I learned then, okay, I have to do QuickBooks. Okay, so I started every day. I would record haircuts on paper and Post-its. Okay, one man's haircut. $60. And I would tuck that Post-it in, where at the end of the night, I would just take all my Post-its out and I would dump them, and those were my receipts. So I would put them into QuickBooks. Okay, QuickBooks. Well, at some point in this time, somebody told me that nobody taught me, or nobody said, you have to pay taxes. I guess that's something you just know.
Right.
Okay, well, this guy didn't know that was something. So I filed for my taxes, but they said you've never paid. Oh. So there's a $113,000 tax debt over 24 months. So yeah, I was gaining for all these services, but services were taxed, and QuickBooks was telling me to charge tax, so I was charging, but it just went straight into the bank account, so it was sold.
I tell you, man, that white dude with that American flag, he's a monster.
So I learned very early how to. I learned that part, but going back into these gentlemen that I had, they were coming in for a haircut, but the student was president. I was ready. I knew the questions I needed to ask without sounding dumb. I had to learn what an ROI was. How do I gain an ROI on a business? Kind of speaking, well, you first have to build a business, and then you generate income, and there's your return on your investment. Return on investment. Return on investment. Write it down. Post it. Got that. ROI. And then I started learning, when you have the LLC, your limited liability company. Oh, good. LLC need an LLC. S corp, sole corporation. And I just started putting all of these terms with phrases. And then that's when I realized, wow, I just got the best education in a year that people go to business school will never, ever have the opportunity to learn. They'll be able to learn it, but 90% of them aren't going to use it. So it was then that I found, it was a client of mine, and I knew that I needed to move out of this location and get to somewhere where it was, I could be Charlie. I could be, have a little bit of a name. Well, it was McKinney Avenue. Yeah, I had to be on McKinney Avenue because
perfect.
McKinney Avenue was where it was at.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
fucking bumping on McKinney
Yeah.
Avenue. There was the 2 nightclubs I was next to, and then there was all the restaurants and McKinney Avenue, and that was like 2009, 2010.
For those who don't know,
McKinney Avenue was
is uptown Dallas.
Yeah, it was the spot.
It's where you want to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And it was filled with SMU after SMU.
Right.
And, Southern Methodist University, it was college after college. Basically,
exactly.
you got your, 1-bedroom apartment that you spent way too much money on, but you were right in the scene. There was just, it was everything that you wanted to be. And I needed to put myself there. And one of my clients at that time said, how much will it take? How many mirrors do you need? How many chairs do you need? So I built a business model, a business plan. And I built it on a napkin, on a Metropolitan Cafe napkin, because it was one of those long diner napkins, so I could get a lot on it. It was trifold. I'm not kidding. I filled a napkin with my business plan. And I just went down to that cafe every day and just kind of put, mirrors are going to cost me this much. So this guy gave me $15,000 to buy my hardware, buy my 3 chairs that I needed, buy the mirrors. And that was my first investor. And he told me, you have 24 months to pay this $15,000 back to me.
Right.
I was like, that's easy. I got that. And that's when the business started to grow. But it wasn't until I moved to McKinney Avenue that I realized none of my clients live in Uptown. None of my clients are Uptown girls.
Right.
And so I'm still new on the block, but I'm now working I actually go work the door at a nightclub called Mink. Do you remember Mink? It was on Exposition Park down in Fair Park. And I was working the door there, and it was a hot spot, and it was me just passing out business cards, developing a network, and I started just filling this salon. I mean, I learned so damn much in that place, but the biggest catalyst of learning and educating was I had a horrid landlord. He was the worst.
Right.
And
it could be in that area.
Yeah.
Oh, he
I
could
had
be
a
an
terrible
ass.
landlord.
Yeah.
I hope he's listening to this. And then fast forward 4 years. So now we're in 2012. Yeah, 12, 13. A guy walks into the salon and he said, I would like to bring your salon, what you have now, to the design district. And I said, I don't even know where the design district is.
Right.
Sounds cool.
Sounds cool.
Design district. Sounds cool. And he was a suit. And it was odd. I didn't understand what.
Had you met him in the past?
Never had met him.
He just
before.
walked in.
Yeah, just walked in. And, he had a fancy suit on. I knew he was somebody, but it was just a suit in my eyes. So that deal went a little bit further, and I got some ideas of what was happening from other mentors along the way. And basically, it was Mike Abalon, who was the huge developer.
Right.
Mike bought the design district from the Perot family, who was developing Old Parkland at that time. So they sold all that land to Mike, and Mike had this master vision of what the design district was going to look like. Now, this is back when you needed a protractor to get around in the design district. I think there was still a security booth. Like, if you weren't to the trade, like there was do not enter.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was it was very remote, but this guy trusted me. He liked me and I liked him. So it was like, let's, whatever. You're going to buy me out of my lease. You're going to spend all this money to get me there. Fine, do it. So that's when I moved into the design district, and that's where our business just
exploded, huh?
Exploded. That's when...
is it due to location, or was it due to the fact that...
That's when Charlie became somebody.
Okay.
Charlie was now being talked about, and Charlie was a thing.
Right.
And at that time, it was just Hair by Charlie. And we moved that brand to the design district. And at this time, I think I had 7 employees, people cutting hair. So we just kind of outgrew each space. And then we had a bunch of assistants, and we knew that we could make the move and make it we could make it and do okay and continue to learn as we go. But that was 0 to 100. When we moved from McKinney Avenue to the design district, that was, we went up almost 250% in 1 year, just from word of mouth and, the extension of where our team was going.
Yeah.
We were developing a team. And fast forward today, that's still where we're at. We've now moved locations.
Right.
We were operating with 7 employees. Now we have 22 in our Dallas location, 25 in our Dallas location. And I have learned so much along the way and continue to learn.
How long have you
so
been
much
clean, Charlie?
along the way. I got clean in 2004. I got clean on my mother's birthday.
Wow.
That's the first time I've said that since she's passed. So give me a minute with that.
Yeah.
August 19th, 2004, I got clean. So this will be 16 years.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It's
bro.
awesome.
That is awesome.
It's awesome. That's my
Yeah.
biggest blessing. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be, I have great salons. I have a great team.
Yeah.
I have everything that I have an amazing wife. I have a house. I have everything that I could, but I would have none of it if I still had the drink and the drug in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of it, none of it would be there.
You know what's so encouraging about listening to your story is you did just about everything wrong you could do. And I don't mean that negative. I just mean there was a
No,
lot.
I'm just trying to think if there was anything I missed. I got it all. No.
I just mean there were a lot of screw ups along the way, and
Yeah.
we think these people that are super successful, like you and Darren, and people we see on Instagram, that they've always just made every move perfectly, and everything was just awesome along their journey. But the best thing you did is you just kept going, and you just kept putting one foot in front of the day after day, and you just kept trying and showing up.
Yeah.
And it led to what you're doing today.
Correct.
And to me, that's just such an encouragement because I have the worst case of paralysis by paralysis by analysis. Yeah.
Yes.
Thinking I have to have everything lined up. Yep. Everything has to be perfect.
Yep.
And your story and stories like yours encourage me that just get started, man.
Right.
You don't have to have all the answers. Just go.
It's easier said than done.
Sure.
But when you
Definitely.
came from the deepest, darkest, when you had a noose wrapped around your neck,
Yeah.
you can't get much. It can't get much worse.
Right.
I mean, what? I'm gonna lose some money?
Yeah. Perspective.
Okay.
Man.
So I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say just fake it till you make it and work hard.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were that low,
Yeah.
I remember in your previous one of your previous podcasts with the gratitude, you were talking about when you went to when you were in school, when you were in college, and you got I didn't go to college, so I don't know what the card was that gives you meals.
Meal ticket.
The meal ticket card.
Right.
You alluded to it in this podcast, and you said, that there were other kids that were like, the chicken's dry, or the pasta's not. There's not enough sauce on the pasta.
Mm-hmm.
But until you ate shit, you don't realize how good things are.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I'm never going to be one of those leaders that looks at my team and says, you got to fake it till you make it.
Right.
No, because not everybody went through that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's my story. That's how I did it.
Yeah.
Yours is going to be different, and that's okay too.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
But I ate shit for long enough that once I started to see what was coming from taking risks, it became easier to take the risk.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. It seems like you're not one to say I've arrived, I'm here now. But now that you're in the place that you are today and as successful as you are,
Yeah.
I always ask, and I'm always curious about this: does it feel as good as what you hoped it would feel like?
I don't know how to answer that. I think I can answer that in the sense as I do what I love every day. And to me, that's the definite. I don't give a shit what Webster says, but if you can do what you love every day and make a living doing it, then you're successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always it comes. Doesn't
I don't give a
You want to be
shit.
another co-host with us?
I've had the opportunity to do so much and to have so much, and my wife and I had this talk the other. It's like I could open 300 more salons. I have backers on backers on backer. I have people jumping over people to give me money.
Right.
But you find this part in your life where you feel good about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel good. And I'm not one of those. I worked my fucking ass off.
Yes, you did.
to get to where I'm at today so that I can pass it down to my team.
Right.
It has nothing to do with Charlie anymore. Charlie, I've been there, done that. I forgot more about hairdressing than most people know. But when I see a girl that started with me, she moved here from South Carolina and was looking for a change and resourced me and put her faith in me and came to me and apprenticed me and now is making $500,000 a year being a hairdresser.
That's the joy.
That gives me joy.
That's the joy.
That
Darren talks
gives me
about that
joy.
all the time.
That's the
I
joy.
love payday.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, if there's one thing with delegation that I hope that I never lose in my business is signing paychecks. Not because I'm signing the paycheck. Right. Yes, it's nice being, the signer of the paycheck.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But I want people to do well around me. That's what gets me going now. It's not about Charlie's old. I'm 40 now. I'm not the young, attractive flirt. I'm old new. But at the same time, when I look around that room and I see 22 girls and guys having a career, getting the things, being, enjoying what they do, that's what I get off on now.
Yeah.
That's the fun part for me.
Yeah.
And, it is kind of odd because I have, a team of 42 between Dallas and Fort Worth. And, I have a bunch of very beautiful girls that work for me. They're very attractive young women. And they all call me dad. And it's kind of weird whenever it happens in a situation where it's like me and Darren would be having a conversation, or me and Tiffany, my client, would be having a conversation, and I have two of them. Hey, Dad, do you mind if we go? It's like, guys, there's a lot of stuff going on with those words.
It's 2021.
No, but you know what? I wouldn't trade it for the world. Man. I love that they look at me, and that to me is the part that keeps me
it goes back to what we say every week. It's service of people.
That's it. So we had dinner a few months ago at Lover Seafood.
Yeah.
And it was, it's the first time I actually met you in person.
Yeah.
And Tiffany knows how big I am on being a servant, just having a servant spirit, right? And brother, you walked up with your lovely wife, and I could just see it in you. And the conversation we had, that day flew by, and you owe me another dinner. That day flew by, brother. Night.
You did buy that dinner. I do.
No, do I? Did I?
Yeah, you did.
No, you did.
No, you bought.
Well, yeah. I did. Yeah,
Hey,
that's
I'll come
right.
too.
But anyway, the conversation went by too fast because I could see it in you. And that's the reason why I wanted you on the show, Charlie, because people need to hear your story, man. You're being selfish not sharing this story. You need to write a book.
Yeah, and I just don't look at it that way. I just look at it in the sense of, hey, here's the cards you were given. Here's the hands that you played. You played some bad ones. You played some good ones.
Yeah.
But you know what? Today I wake up with a smile on my face every goddamn day. I look at the obituaries and I'm not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. We'll figure the rest will figure itself out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I know where this is probably the longest podcast. You didn't realize what it was going to be like having a hairdresser with a gift of gab on your podcast. But here's one bit of backstory. In my childhood, I was my father being a football coach and growing up in Pittsburgh. Some of my fondest memories are sitting there with my grandfathers and my father watching Steelers on Sunday. Pretty much the town of Pittsburgh stops on Sundays.
Yeah.
And, I was born in 81. So the 80s Pittsburgh Steelers were just, they were just overshadowed by the 70s Steelers, and my father lived in those great days of, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Bradshaw. And that just came into my life, as a Steeler fan. And I was born, but I was raised to hate that blue star.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was raised to hate it. Hate it.
I understand.
Hate it.
I understand that.
So my first experience with the Dallas Cowboys came in it was the 1996 Super Bowl.
Yeah. How did that work out for you? I'm just asking. How did that work out for you? Where were you that day? Hey, let's go back to tell that story.
Yeah.
Who was the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys?
Dave Campo at the time.
It was Dave.
Yep.
So between him and Larry Brown, how much money did they lose? I mean, because Neil O'Donnell threw 3 picks, 2 to Larry.
To Larry.
Larry was MVP,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
Larry
got the
was
MVP and all.
Yeah.
I just want to know how much they paid Neil. I mean, it was
You know,
it was 20-yard slant routes in zone coverage.
You know, look,
you cannot.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. And you know football better than anybody. You've been around it all your life.
I do.
You do.
So again,
there was one that Neil shouldn't have thrown, but the other one, his wide receiver broke off the route. He broke off the route. We watched the film, and we knew what they were going to run.
watched the film.
We knew what they were running.
Cowboy fans and Cowboys, they run different film.
Yeah.
You know, they only
I'm just
see,
saying.
they have one camera
You
lens.
know what I love?
It's like Instagram now. It's like getting catfish, that filter.
You get the
They live in
filter.
there.
But this is what I do like about Neil. Neil didn't throw anybody under the bus. He never threw his wide receiver under the bus, in which he could have easily have
Absolutely.
said, "Hey, no," because
What I
that wasn't
remember-
his fault. The
But
second
that was
one was
also, let me then say, you know, that was 96. So I was 14, 15 years old. So I knew enough about the game at this point. You know, I'll always tell, whenever I have a child, I hope to, whether it's a girl or a boy, I hope to coach football at some point.
Right.
Because, you know, I will sit and watch a football game and
You're breaking
I
it
can
down.
dice. I mean, I grew up in the film room.
Yeah.
I know exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
The game has evolved, but it hasn't evolved that much.
Right. You're still running the same.
So at the same time, you know, I remember the season that the Cowboys had. And you guys, the 96 Cowboys, it was, what was your record that year? Do you remember what your record
we were
was?
like 11-5. We weren't
Was
that
it?
good.
You weren't that good,
we weren't
but I
that
didn't even
good.
think it was that good.
No. Yeah, we were that
it
fine.
was ups and downs and over and outs. And, but I'll never forget the heartbreak that I felt because that was my first experience that my father had in the 70s. So then it was sheer hatred for the Cowboys.
Yeah, should be.
Sheer hatred for the Cowboys.
That's all. You know what? What I'll do is I'll bring that Super Bowl ring in. I should have wore it today. I don't know why I did not wear
come on,
that
man.
ring. I should have wore it today. Next dinner, I'll wear it.
How many Super Bowls do the Cowboys have?
Hey, we got, you know what? See, why do you have to go there? You only got one more than us.
I'm just, Darren, I just asked you a question.
Hey, Ben, save me. Ask your final question, Ben.
Love it.
It
Love
must
the
be
answer.
time's up.
It must not be as much as many as the
It must
Steelers.
be getting late.
Hey,
He's cold in here.
He's old now. He's got to get his early bird dinner.
Must be getting late. That's all for now, folks.
Yeah, man. Well, you opened it up, and this is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've known you forever. You opened it up. This is one of our favorite guests.
Yeah.
Gonna be
I
one
told
of your
you.
favorite guests, man.
Yeah.
I'll second that, man.
Yeah.
That was. Thank you so much for your story.
For
sharing your story.
Yeah.
For coming up here and doing this. This was awesome.
I'm honored to share it with. I'm humbled. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, Darren Woodson just asked me to. I think my father might be rolling over in his grave right now, but you know, Dad,
You
look,
came in
look,
line,
Dad, I made
dude.
it. Look, Dad, I made it. No, with you know, your podcast has such a reach and is a very intelligent podcast. And it's one of those where it's nice to be able to have the ability to share your experience, strength, and hope with real people, with people who've been there before.
Yeah.
You know, with people who've made it, but people that made it from nothing, came from something. And so I'm very honored to be on this. You guys have had some great shows.
Thank you, brother.
And it continues to get better.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
this is. I walked in here. I was like, "Wow, this isn't just like a AirPod in my ear, and this is a full blown studio."
Yeah. Well, thank you, man.
I'm
We're
humbled.
making it happen.
Thank you.
Making it happen.
Well, we end every episode with this question. I'm sure you've heard it before, and I'm very interested in hearing what you're going to say. So if you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, doesn't mean necessarily to change anything, but if you just go back and tell yourself one thing, where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
Oh, that's easy. I go back to my 16-year-old self, whenever it was that point where my brother had just kind of, leapfrogged me and seniority with my father, and kind of just looking for that validation. And I would probably go back to him and just say, I love you.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to love you. Like, love yourself.
Yeah.
Be okay with you. But at that age, you couldn't tell that person nothing.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Those teenage boy years, there's just things you couldn't say. But I would definitely go back and tell him, I love you.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine.
That's awesome, man.
No better way to end it.
Man, we appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're not.
That was
done.
fun.
We're gonna have round tables, and you're gonna be on the round tables. So we gotta.
I would love to.
I was gonna say, let's get a fourth chair.
Those are a fun. That's
come
a fun format. That's a fun format.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just let's keep it with one. I'll bring in a new prop.
No. We have enough. The one that's
Hey,
right
we
behind your
We
head.
got plenty of shells for a Steelers
That's
helmet.
right behind your head. Looks beautiful.
No, we'll film the next one, and I'll wear a prop.
Yeah. Hey, just wear a helmet.
Bye, Charlie. Hey, we had a great time today.
See you guys next